make sure I'm understanding, but you're talking about a leader who people don't really like, but their team is successful
Yeah.
and winning somehow, right? And
Yeah,
I
he's
think,
opposite to what you described. Like he doesn't care if he says hello or not in the morning. Like the tactics, or for some reason, sometimes I've been into environments and look around, and I'm thinking like, how is this working? As in working, as in like the team performs or doesn't perform. Like people are not happy, as on the human level. Like no one's treated like they want to be treated, but it just works. And sometimes players end up like sort of wanting and needing that. Like we need someone who comes in and says, does the tough things and the whatever things. We don't like him, but we're winning, and we all want to win because players, especially the pros, they shine from the wins. Like no one's going to say, you know what, you played great, you're great human beings, but you lost, and the supporters will still like pat you in the back. They'll still insult you, like they throw stuff at you, like throw stuff at your car. Like no one cares how you do it. Just whatever happens is what's important.
yeah. And I think there's a lot of different ways to approach that question. I think one of the things that and like I talked about in the beginning about how, when you first get into coaching and you're young, you want to be liked almost more than, you want to be hard about your standards. And I think the older you get and the more you get into this profession, you realize that the standards create your culture. And I think, most of those situations where the leader is very poorly liked but the team is successful, I believe that there's probably a lot of other people affecting that team in a very positive way, because again, like the culture is is the most important thing, I think, in a team's success. And the leader might be bad and they might play a role in that culture. Like they might not be liked, but they're playing a role somewhere over here. And then you have the team whose morale is building on the fact that they all feel the same, right? And the culture is building. And so there are other people influencing that, the strength coaches, the athletic trainers, the whatever it might be, who are holding that team afloat, right? And they're all corralling around the fact that they want something really bad together. If the team is together, that is really what you need most. And I think you can have leaders that are not liked, who are hard about standards, who feel a certain way, who are, maybe they're the target or whatever the case is, but if the team can fuel themselves off of that, then I don't think it will last forever. When you talk about winning cultures, you talk about UConn women's basketball, like long periods of time, like where the culture stays high, that's not a bad leader who just the team's morale is, fired around. But when cultures start to change or you get a big shift in culture, the team might just be moraling around the fact that like that's not who we want to follow, but we do care about each other. And caring about each other and caring about the people is really where you're going to find that big change. And that's just speculation on my end in terms of like
No,
where I
no,
have seen a
that
lot
is
of good and bad
no, no. For like the
bad
people
leaders.
listening, like we've never met before. We've never talked about my former job. So you just genuinely 100% described a place I used to be in, and it's basically the guys were like, we don't like him. He's gonna be here forever because he knows whoever. But this is our dream. So it's sort of like we need to learn how to, get along or do whatever we can. And they had like these like rounds where they're just talking about like doesn't matter what he said. So no, they weren't always like fighting against it. They just learned that it was part of like, one of the hurdles that was part of their dream. So they goes, well, just see the positive sides of him. When he shows up the bad sides, we just know what it is. Stay united as a group, whatever. Like, but it's exactly you were describing everyone. I'm like, have we met before? Like, have I told you what some of my former jobs were? But it's exactly I like to believe that, maybe from my ego perspective, but that I was one of those people saying like, just don't blame it on anyone else, even if he's like such and such. You can't really blame your lack of or you giving up on someone else. That's just an excuse. So there's levels, but some of the guys have moved on and like done different things and like all based on the culture they used to have, doors in. So yeah, that's agree. It made me think about my
Yeah.
former jobs. Like, geez, right, it was like that. That's what happened.
Yeah. And I unfortunately, I think there's too many poor leaders in positions they shouldn't be, and you see it a lot more often than not. But you'll just see teams start to fuel, like it's almost a motivation factor. They fuel their fire off of this poor leader that they realize doesn't care necessarily about their individual success. and they just kind of get fired up around that. And I've seen that a couple times, unfortunately.
That sounds like the plot to the movie fucking Major League, no? Like the fucking team rallies around each other, like fuck that, right? Like, sorry for everybody still listening to us. Yes, there was a fucking. We did just talk about the fucking movie Major League with Charlie Sheen. All right, switching gears to the tactical world. You talked about H2F, and you're fucking in it. Like we've got two coaches. First of all, as we talked, we've had two coaches on. They're both on the West Coast. They're working at similar bases. We have a ton of members on the forum talking about tactical world, and Fort Bragg has both the guys, both Justin and Tall Alex, had said nothing but positive things about Fort Bragg. Fort Bragg in our members forum that I've been active in gets nothing but like fucking rave reviews. So what's the secret in the sauce? As we just talked about leadership, do you guys have the best fucking leaders? Like, what is it?
We do. And I will tell you that anytime anyone gets stationed at Fort Bragg, like what you're going to hear is like, oh, so you got to drink the Kool-Aid. Because if you go to the 82nd, you have to be bought into the 82nd. It's part of the culture. So it's just like a rite of passage. You go through an AIC course, which is like, it's like an airborne refresher course. And part of the course is like learning the history of the 82nd and just realizing that you are at one of the greatest places in the world. And every leader there will tell you that. And I think in any world, there are struggles for sure, but I will tell you, I think I tell everybody when they ask me like, oh, how do you like being at the 82nd? I'm like, personally, I really, because, some people are like, oh, it's so, you got to be so hua and so army to be at the 82nd. And I'm like, I love it. I would rather be around a bunch of people who want to be where they're at than be around a bunch of people who are miserable to be where they are. So I love the motivation. I love the tempo. It has so much tradition. And I think when we go back to talking about culture, the 82nd does an incredible job of hanging on to their culture and hanging on to their history and like creating buy-in. And I appreciate that very much. So they like to stay true to who they are, and they take a lot of pride in the fact that we are the 82nd Airborne. And then I think going into the H2F thing, I think it has definitely, for old army people, it used to be, your platoon sergeant and your squad leaders kind of creating PT plans without any, like we talked about, like, you're, as a strength and conditioning coach, like your genius is how to get people to be better athletes and injury prevention and like getting them better for the long term, like longevity, right? And we were allowing people to who had no background in that, just create physical fitness plans. And so I'm like, yes, I am bought into H2F. Like we have these people who have this background and are qualified, and it's the struggle right now. I think that we see as leaders with the implementation process is our and this is infantry specifically, but when you write a strength conditioning program, like it's a program that's written over time, and when the games are, when the practices are, what your high tempo, low tempo days are, you have it all planned out. In the infantry, it's like, we're going to go to the field for 2 weeks, or we're going to be at the ranges for the next 3 days, and we're probably not going to sleep any. And then you talk about recovery. And so that's been the hard part. But I will say that we are doing, as a division, like a much better job of trying to create that long-term plan so that we can do a better job of like implementing something that is impactful and that you can actually see progression on. So I have a great relationship with I have a strength coach that works with us specifically. And actually, we just got Team Builder.
Fucking
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.